Welcome back to this latest episode of Japan's Top Business Interviews. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Story, President, Dale Carnegie Tokyo Training. My special guest today is Aytekin Yildiz, who is the President of BEL Japan and also the Northeast Asia Cluster.
Yeah, North Asia Cluster.
North Asia Cluster, you're the CEO for that. So what does that mean? The cluster incorporates many countries, or what does that actually mean?
Many countries actually.
So,
in our group, actually, we have this organization cluster at group level.
Right.
So group of countries.
So how many countries do you cover?
In my current scope, I have Japan and Korea as North Asia cluster.
That's the North Asia cluster.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
So, you've been here how long now in the post?
2.5 years.
2.5 years, right?
Yeah.
So thinking about, you've probably been to Japan before, you probably know about the business, but actually being on the ground and working in the business is different. What were some of the things that you thought, this is a bit interesting, or this is a bit different, or this is a bit great, or this is a bit challenging? What were some of the differences you noticed from your previous leadership experiences to leading in Japan?
Yeah, maybe just before answering your question, let me talk about myself a bit of my background. So I'm Turkish. So I did my studies in Turkey in a top business school, and then I started my career in a big conglomerate in Turkey, very close to, or in terms of culture and structure, very close to big Japanese corporations.
Well, that's interesting. My imagination would not be that a big Turkish conglomerate would be similar to a big Japanese conglomerate. Why would that be the case?
It was actually...
what was similar?
What was actually similarities? One is the way of working culture. At that time, it was more than 25 years ago. Culturally, actually, Turkish way of working was similar to Japan, very much hierarchy driven.
Okay.
And secondly, it was a big holding with several companies, several industries in the structure. So it was that's why for me it reminds me some big corporations in Japan in terms of large scale of industries having in this structure.
And is that hierarchy driven by rank? Is it also driven by age, or is it driven by years in the company? How is that hierarchy in Turkey decided at that time?
All played a role.
All played
actually.
a role. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
just
rank,
like
age, and seniority in the company all played a different role. But all in all, actually, it made the hierarchy actually important in the lives of corporations and the culture. I was, as a young person, freshman at work at that time. I lived this culture, so that's why Japan has some similarities with my previous experience in Turkey.
And so, how long were you in that conglomerate before you joined BEL Japan? How long was that?
Actually, in between, I worked for a JV between that conglomerate and Groupe Danone, another French
famous company. Yes.
Yeah, exactly, food company. And then I moved to France with Danone. So I spent quite some time in France with Groupe Danone before joining Groupe BEL in France. So it's been 15 years that I'm with BEL. So since by the way, one interesting thing maybe for my career, I started in finance.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So I started in finance, and then I experienced different functions of finance. And at BEL, I had an opportunity to stretch myself into other functions, such as HR, purchasing, IT, and industrial controlling, so that I got ready actually for the country manager role almost 14 years ago.
Now, is that something that you drove yourself? You wanted to have a CEO role. You knew that you might get to the CFO, but you're not going to make it to the CEO unless you have a broad base of experience? Or is BEL Japan very skilled in guiding people through their career which was the driver there? That was BEL Japan or yourself?
I think the first one was more dominant. I wanted to just experience this general management role. At the same time, Groupe BEL gave me this opportunity, because it's not common in every company,
No.
Especially in FMCG, a background coming from finance, taking a general management role is not, at least at that time. Nowadays we see more and more this background is taking the lead position. So more myself and also company actually allow me to take this opportunity to experience this.
Well, one of the big differences there is, if you're in the CFO role or the finance role or the money part of it, it's all about numbers, right? It's really cut and dried. It's pretty straightforward. It's planning, accounting, all those sorts of things. But in a leadership role, it's all about people. So it's not that easy to go from having that sort of very dry, logical, numbers-driven type of approach to actually having empathy, good communication skills, really focused on developing people. They're not, I mean, yes, you can do both, but I'm just generally saying that technical people tend to not be great in those areas. So how did you find it yourself? Was it a struggle to go from being very sort of cut and dried and logical to being in that grey area of people, who are not so logical, not so easy to just get on the track? It leaves a lot more communication skills, a lot more empathy. How did you find that changeover for you?
Yeah, it's a very fair question and point. Well, actually, finance people are seen, especially actually 15, 20 years ago. Now I think it's changing. The finance world is changing too. It was more, numbers, facts and figures function and people, right? So that's one fact. I was conscious about it. It was a challenge and evolution that I wanted to realize with myself when I moved to country manager role. But at the same time, throughout my career, even if I was in finance, I was very close to business. So I worked with different functions in finance. I didn't stay in one role and throughout the whole finance career. So I worked with salespeople, I worked with marketing people and industrial people, also R&D people very closely. So almost half of my job was to serve them, was to understand the business. So that's why I was very close to business all the time, to deliver, to serve better, to help them, to support them better. Second thing, especially in Danone, in France, when I worked in R&D center, global R&D center, I worked with very senior leaders and more projecting, long-term strategies, mid-long-term strategies with product innovations, marketing strategies. So it's helped me to develop this business acumen quite extensively. And lastly, you're right. I mean, from finance to general management, you need to develop other skills, other competencies like people, like, customer centricity, like sometimes, how to say, deal with uncertainty. So for those, especially these transition periods, taking the responsibility of HR, purchasing, industrial controlling, helped me to develop these muscles as well before moving to country manager role. Of course, it's a journey, never ending. So I said myself when I took the role, first country manager role, more than 10 years ago, I need to evolve from fact and figures, logical. I was not that strict, by the way, even if in finance, to storytelling, engaging, and getting the hearts of the people type of leadership. And I believe I took a big journey and then progress a lot on this.
So did you have another country manager role before this one? You came from another country?
Of course, actually.
Where was your first country manager role?
First country manager role, it was in Turkey. Okay, right. And then I moved to cluster general manager role with several markets. And then I moved to, like, let's say 3 years ago almost, to APAC to take a broader role. Yeah.
Right. And so when you think about it, did BEL Japan or Danone, for that matter, did they give you any sort of training to help you bridge from having had a specialised area to a more general leadership area, or they let you work it out yourself? How did that happen?
Well, I would say it's more BEL, my current company, gave me this opportunity to evolve in that direction. So, of course, they supported me with some practical things. So taking the let's say the responsibility and then seeing the things live. I mean, by doing. So that's one. And second, of course, they supported us, the leaders at global level, with executive leadership programs, just to develop ourselves on that front. So yeah, my company is supporting the leaders everywhere actually to develop these aspects.
Yeah, and I guess you're in APAC. Where were you based in APAC before you came to Japan?
Before, actually, I was based in Istanbul, my hometown.
And then you were covering APAC from Istanbul?
No, when I moved to Tokyo, so I took over this role.
Oh,
APAC,
okay, so this is the base for APAC.
Yes, exactly, Japan for APAC cluster.
Right.
Well, at the beginning, I had multi-countries in my scope, and recently, last summer, there was an organizational change, and now I lead the North Asia cluster.
Right, so they've actually made it a bit smaller.
Japan and Korea. With more,
yeah.
with more exactly focus. Yeah.
You mentioned before about the importance of communication, storytelling, engagement, these sorts of things. Thinking through your career, and including Japan particularly, what have you found works well to get people engaged to follow you?
Particularly in Japan, you mean?
Well, yes, particularly in Japan, but there may be some other things you've found in your career that work well, and you brought those to Japan, or maybe they didn't work in Japan. That'd be interesting too.
Okay, I think, definitely each market is different. Each market is unique. But when it comes to especially my experience here in Asia and particularly in Japan, of course, there are, let's say, some differences versus my other markets or my previous experiences. Let me list these differences and then how did I actually tackle these, which of them are working, which are not. So let me answer in that way. Sure. So I think the first thing is the communication style. So communication style is quite different, especially compared to my previous experiences. So it's more indirect communication than direct communication in Japan. So you need to adapt yourself to this. The second thing, giving opinion or expressing idea or giving the feedback is again part of communication, but it's different. So all in all, my previous recipe, which was working in my previous scopes, I needed to adapt those recipes to Japan, to Asia, to succeed in Japan. So what I did, the first thing is to engage your teams with why.
Why?
Yeah, this is important. I mean, setting a vision together is important because especially in indirect communication culture, you need to give the purpose. You need to set the purpose for the people. So what I did after 6-9 months of working here, I reset this with my team. So just we co-built the why part, the vision part. Okay, so that's number one.
How do you co-build it? Are you talking the whole team? Are you talking your direct reports? Are you talking with maybe just a couple of people you've picked out? I mean, how did you do that? How did you approach it?
I tried all.
All right. Okay.
Well, actually, in let's say, again, based on my previous experiences, normally you engage your leadership teams and then they cascade this to their teams. Normally, it's supposed to work, right? But here, first of all, I started with my leadership teams, but I felt that I need to touch the other layers as well in the organization to engage them. Okay, so what I did basically, I organized a workshop with my leadership team plus extended teams, so managers from all functions. So within this workshop, it was, of course, objective was set before that we're gonna co-build, co-create the vision for BEL Japan for the next 3 to 5 years. So including, commercial strategies, innovation pipeline, all other, functions and all what we can think about the building strategy stuff. Then I was part of participants. So I was just in a group because we, divided people into the groups with multi-functions, multitask, so that you can have more fruitful conversations. So I was just a participant. Of course, I did the opening speech and conclusion, but I was one of them. So they felt hierarchy is not there, or hierarchy is not imposing his way of thinking or strategic thinking. So we shared this. We built the plans, okay? So it was an engaging one for the
And
teams.
did you have someone, you're not leading it in that sense, did you have someone facilitate it for you? So rather than you being the facilitator, you had someone else designated, or did you bring someone in from outside to drive that? How did you run that process?
Well, I played very frugal. So actually, of course, we build the things with external help and also with our group help. Then our HRD played this role, facilitator. I didn't play that role intentionally. And actually, we didn't have any external facilitator for this workshop.
I see.
Yeah. So engage your teams with this. The second one, you need to establish a strong operating model. When I say operating model, how do you run the business? So what are your key meetings, key platforms that you need to keep regularly? And people should know that there is a platform, and in that platform, they can express their ideas or the problems or, the business related topics. So I established this, and with discipline, we are practicing this. We have 10 company level meetings, monthly held. So I'm part of these platforms so that different functions come to these meetings, and we review the business topics, supply chain, innovation, so on and so forth. So this is the second one, super important. And the third one is connectivity, connection. So connect with your customers, connect with your consumers, connect with your people, partners. So connect is super important. So we again reinforce these connections with the teams and with our external ecosystem.
When I hear this, I ask myself the question, wasn't there a why beforehand? Wasn't there, system in place beforehand? These things are, generally speaking, pretty well established in companies. So I'm wondering, did those things have sort of faded out and you had to bring them back, or you just wanted to switch the focus to what you thought was the right direction? Because I imagine the why has been there forever. The systems have been there forever. So why do you need to make that change?
Why? It's a good question. Because actually Japan, let's take before COVID, after COVID, there's a big disruption in the market, right? Big volatility. And especially this volatility accelerated, let's say when I joined in 22 summertime, we saw these volatilities coming and accelerating. So when I say volatility, let's look at the external context, right? So Japanese yen, we are importers. So import-based business are disrupted big time after this, Japanese yen devaluation. Inflation came to the market after long time. So I think more and more we see, when I discuss externally, I hear this word coming to Japan: transformation of the business models. That's why we needed to reset some fundamentals. Otherwise, you're right. I mean, we are an established company. We had processes. We had also the why part. But it had to be reset this and then adapt ourselves this changing world, this volatile environment.
one of the things about Japan, it's not so easy to get change. So, people can intellectually agree, but actually getting them to do something different or do something new, risk-averse culture, don't like things that are new because they're not tested, it might fail, it might make me look bad, it may be an error generated by this change. So how did you encourage people to get involved, to take the risk of change and to take the risk of something new?
It's so true for Japan. I think what I did first, I introduced the concept test and learn. Test and learn, I used to work this concept previously in my previous markets, but here, as you said, it's more risk averse and also perfectionist culture, right? Perfect means you need to be perfect before taking any initiative or taking any action. And it's completely opposite of, agility. Because agility requires good enough, and then you need to move. And in this volatile environment, what we needed to be more agile and also fast mover, right? So I introduced this concept first, test and learn. So the teams at the beginning, they try to understand what does it mean. So I told them that you can bring any idea, maybe seems not for you, not relevant or even etc. So difficult to implement, but bring it to the table, let's discuss. And then we have the right to test new initiatives, new ideas. So now the teams, I like it, they are bringing the new ideas, saying that test and learn, can we test? Of course, we have the processes to review. And then if we see that it makes sense, I allow the teams to test the idea. Then the idea is, if it is successful, how can we roll out? How can we make it scale up? Or sometimes we can fail. Failure is an option too. But what do we learn from this failure to make it better next time?
How did you treat failure? Because, sometimes companies say things like, yes, test and learn. And then something goes horribly wrong. And next thing, people are being scolded, people are being called out on it, people being attributed the blame to it, and they realize, oh, that was a whole bunch of hot air. And the reality is I'm going to get into trouble if I fail. So when you put that out there, we're going to do test and learn. That implies that not everything's going to be 100% successful. So it implies there will be failures, and how we deal with those failures demonstrates to everybody if we're really sincere about test and learn, or it's just hot air. So how did you deal with failure, and how did you publicly deal with failure?
Okay, actually, leadership should be consistent, daring, and role model to the teams. I mean, walk the talk. If you treat your right, if you say this on the paper and verbally, theoretically, but when you treat a failure in a different way, I think you're gonna, ruin all your establishing among the teams, because one example will be enough, especially in this kind of culture that they have fear of mistake, right? So,
and everyone's watching.
Of course.
Everyone's, like I say, Japan, everyone here is a sort of card-carrying boss watcher. Watch the boss very carefully. So you're right. How do you look? How do you sound when you're talking about things that failed? They take a lot from that.
So a couple of things. First, I put myself in. Okay, so it means it's a collective failure, collective mistake.
How do you do that? How do you put yourself in?
Because I've never ever used the language individually. You did it, you made it, you proposed it. No, it's at the end of the day, I'm the last person who gave this, validation. So it means it's
So do you say things like I failed, or do you say things like we failed?
We failed,
right?
Yeah.
So
it's very important, this language.
Okay.
And second thing, I'm asking the question, so what did we learn? Or maybe not in order, but what did we learn? I'm asking this question from this. So then you invite the teams to reflect, so to figure out what we did, let's say not good or not properly, that we failed. Okay, so just inviting the teams learning process collectively, because innovation or taking initiatives is an organization mindset. You need to establish this. It takes time. So that's the second one. And what could we do differently? I mean, if you restart this process, what would you do differently? So again, you invite people to reflect. Okay, somehow you are making them figuring out what went wrong and why. And then next time, what can I do differently? What can I change?
On that, how do you capture that? Because in my experience, most companies go through these processes, but they're not good at actually capturing the learnings, getting them down somewhere where they can be found and they can be consulted at the next level. Whereas people who are in the consulting business, the big consulting companies, I mean, these people are publishing books, they're publishing articles based on what they've learned. They have really, really good systems to document what happened, capture what worked, capture what didn't work, and keep it, and then use it as a base for the next time that comes up. Not many companies I've come across, apart from consultancies, are that good. Did you find a way to capture that and to record it so that it can be consulted, you can reference it in the future? Okay, we're about to do something else now. Let's go back and look at our previous examples. Does that happen for you or no?
Well, you're right. Ideally, you should do that. But I think in our cases, we don't have such structure and time, to create a case study, cases, etc. So what do we do instead? Actually, of course, the same people are gonna do the next project. Okay, so we remind ourselves our learnings in these processes. I mentioned the platforms exist. So in those platforms, we remind ourselves in the past it happened like that. So it's the memory of the organization, more live, more I would say experimental than building some cases.
And what about, you talk about bringing up something new, developing ideas, testing them. Do you have a process within the organization or you personally to bring ideas out? Because there are certain ideation methodologies that work very well. Have you come across one that you found works very well? I mean, if you've got a bunch of people here, they've all got ideas, they've all got experience, they've all got insight. How do you actually get all that together and how do you extract those ideas? Have you found a system for doing that?
Yeah. Actually, again, several sources are in usage in practice. One is this collective ideation. Of course, we have these monthly platforms, as I said, development committees. Second, we look at our markets out of Japan, again, within BEL Group, because we have so many best practices, great examples to share and to roll out. So that's another source or inspiration. The third one is external, of course. Personally, even if I'm from finance, I stayed always external centric, customer centric. So I try to meet other players or other potential partners or collaboration areas. So I try to bring this in. Also, I invite my teams to bring those kind of things in. So it's coming from external and also sometimes customers, actually. Customers are requesting some innovative ideas or new practices that we take into consideration and then we innovate, we adapt. So several sources we are using for this matter.
If you want to be successful as a leader, do the Leadership Training for Managers course. All companies need people who can both manage and lead. Leading people screams out for real skills in communication, dealing with all different types of people, being excellent at innovation, planning, delegation, handling mistakes, doing performance reviews really well, and inspiring and motivating the team. Do the Leadership Training for Managers course now in either Japanese or English. Leading is easy. Getting people to follow is the hard part. That is a great quote from Yogi Berra. Surprisingly, Despite the complexities of leading here in Japan, everyone has to work it out by themselves. Foreign leaders want practical, applicable, expert advice. This is now available for the first time in history. Grab your copy of Japan Leadership Mastery on Amazon today and avoid the mystery, trial and error, especially the errors. And trust is important everywhere.
Yes.
And I think particularly in Japan, trust is important. And so what have you found works well with teams to get them to trust you and follow you?
Very important. And it's, for me, I mean, again, regardless of market, regardless of country, trust is super important. You need to establish as a leader or as a person as well. So for me, what it works, one is authenticity.
So what does that mean? When people throw this word around, authentic leader.
Okay.
I often wonder, what do they mean by authentic leader?
I mean, let me give my definition on this. I'm a foreigner in Japan. Okay, I cannot be Japanese. I cannot pretend to be Japanese. I need to be myself, to feel at ease, to be better. Of course, with some adaptability and respect to the culture. So, being authentic for me, be yourself, be transparent, be honest, and walk the talk. These are the aspects of being authentic for me. So I'm trying to be that. So that I think trust will come if people see you or feel that you are candid with your, I mean, sometimes, even tough things, tough topics, if you put on the table in a way that you are honest, people will understand. People understand, okay? So that's one aspect.
Just on that point, thinking about controlling emotions, I don't know anything about Turkish culture at all.
Very emotional.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, because sometimes bosses from outside of Japan have very short tempers, are very impatient, and they're very strong and explosive. And from a Japanese, point of view, which is really about harmony, everyone getting on nicely together, this is very confronting to have a boss who's got an explosive short temper. And so I think for those sorts of people, when they come to Japan, Japan is a struggle because the team don't trust them because they're unpredictable. You don't know, is the boss going to be okay today, or is the boss going to lose his temper today or her temper today and explode, And from day to day, they're never quite sure where they are. Whereas having consistency and also, even if you've got stress, masking it. I had an example recently. I had something bothering me. I forget what it was. But it must have been on my face because one of my team members came in the office quite early. I was there early. And he asked me, he said, "Are you okay?" Instantly I realized, the things that are worrying me are now showing on my face. And I try to have a poker face that I mask that so it doesn't give any pressure or any negativity to the team, no matter how I'm feeling. Because if I'm down and I push that feeling out, it brings everybody down very quickly. So even if I'm down, I've got to be upbeat and look happy and look great and positive and, that type of thing. So, what do you think about that conundrum in Japan of having to mask your emotions, always be steady, stable, predictable, positive? What do you think?
Well, it's a tricky one. Again, my culture is pretty, communicative and you emotional also. So and also quite close relationship. So of course, for each foreigners coming to Japan, you need to read, the cultural codes, and then you need to adapt to some extent yourself, your style. That's definitely needed. But it doesn't mean that you need to be like Japanese people. Otherwise, again, I'm coming back to authenticity. You are losing yourself. And as a leader, you need to be yourself. And I think there's a way to find a way, with the teams, a kind of balance. As long as they feel that you are honest, you are authentic, and walk the talk, and so on and so forth. I think after a while, they get used to it, your style. you take care of their, way of thinking or cultural things. At the same time, I think it's a two-way stuff. It's not one way. I agree if as a leader you come here and this is my style and everyone should respect, it's not the way. The other way as well, just erase your character, your 40 years, 50 years culture, heritage, and then pretend like to become like a Japanese is a fake as well. It's not real. So that's why you need to find the right balance. That's what I'm trying. It's not easy, but that's the beauty of the job as well. You need to enjoy diversity in Japan. There is a great diversity. I learn, I adapt myself. At the same time, I believe teams are learning from me as well in different situations. One thing is clear and important. You're right. I mean, people are looking at your face when you enter into office in the morning or after a meeting. You try to read your face. As I think it's more dominant in Japan as it's an indirect communication culture. In another market, in my home country or in France, I used to work a long time. They can ask you, are you okay? What happened? Is meeting was okay, etc. In Japan, some people are asking, but most of the time, they try to guess, and then it starts, the imagination part. So that's why you need to pay attention to be consistent and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, we are all human beings. Sometimes, some stuff is arriving and you should be yourself at the end of the day, I believe.
Any other aspects of trust you think have worked well for you?
Well, I think, again, an important aspect to gain this trust part is being humble is important. Not only in Japan, I believe it's a great quality of people. Being humble is important.
But in some very competitive cultures, in some very competitive companies, humble is not part of it. It's assertive, aggressive, one-upping everybody, get the elbows out. So I'm going to the top, get out of my way. They build that type of culture, and I just wonder, in some societies and some companies, that's rewarded. That's thought to be a good thing. We like aggressive, hard-driving people because they make us a lot of money. So how do you get that balance?
Well, you're right. In some cultures, very highly competitive environments, being humble is seen like you are weak.
Yeah.
But, well, we are talking about Japan and Asia. I think in Japan and Asia, it's a good quality, I believe. Being humble, is a great thing. And I believe totally, in other markets too, it's a great quality of a human being. So being humble is important. Also, to gain the trust of the teams and all your ecosystem, when it's necessary, you need to be on front line, with your teams. Sometimes I find myself discussing very operational things, but I see necessity because there is a quite fire at that time. So you need to enter into this topic with your teams, and you need to be there with them, so they feel that my leader is with me, supporting me. So whenever it's necessary, you should support. Then I will come to another topic for Japan. Being strategic and operational is key in Japan. As a leader, I can be only strategic and then the execution operation is my team's job. No, for me, you need to combine both. Because as I said, sometimes you discuss very, supply chain topics, vessels arrival, etc. Very detailed topic, but you need to enter into this because your partners are asking for your involvement.
Yeah, and thinking about culture, you have global BEL Japan culture, or BEL culture, and then you have the Japan culture, and then you have the Aytekin culture. These three levels. Yeah. So what have you found works well to build a culture, a strong culture in Japan?
Well, as you said, I mean, already there are some, cultural aspects existing. So how can you harmonize all this existing stuff? It's a matter of, having a balance, having a harmony at the end of the day. I cannot change very radically my culture, as I said. I mean, I have many years of being myself. I have group culture, yes. I have also Japan culture, which is existing. So how can you do a best recipe, with existing ingredients? That's the key. And for this, of course, a couple of things are important. Observations. You need to observe. I believe I did so many observations. So before touching anything,
well, just on that point, often leaders don't get that chance. I mean, it really depends on the situation you're walking into. If the company's going along nicely, you have time because there's no fire. But sometimes people are sent to Japan because there's a fire. And the headquarter expectation is you're going to turn things around, want those numbers to be looking up, fix that problem, or you're out, and we'll put somebody else in there who can do it. So that's a bit of a tricky balance too. How do you sort of think about that?
Especially, I think in this last couple of years, there's a big sense of urgency on this change, transform the business model, and also, realize the objectives. It's so true. So there again, our role as leaders, of course, to manage the expectations. So I feel myself like a bridge, between HQ expectations, because I'm here to realize those, of course. But at the same time, there is the market realities. So how can you make this bridge? How can you reflect the market realities to manage the expectations? And then, of course, you don't stay there. Then coming to local, how can you engage local teams, convince them, local teams, local environment, local ecosystem, to transform the business because it's necessary. Okay, so you need to play this critical role. You need to find the right balance and to find the right strategy for the market. It's not easy. It's not easy. But that's our role.
Well, one of the things that always, I've been here many years, and always still I have to sort of think about it because every time I suggest something, I get a barrage of negativity about the idea, what's wrong with it. And you have to keep reminding yourself, look, they're not against the idea. They're just helping me to think through what could go wrong, think through some negative implications of this change, and incorporate that into my thinking in case I've missed something. But when you first get it, it feels like, geez, everyone's very negative about things around here. What's wrong with you people? But you have to remind yourself, this is Japan, risk averse. Errors are out, mistakes are out, defects are out, so it's got to be working well. And they're helping you. But you have to have that mentality to say, well, they're not opposing me, they're trying to help me, and actually have that little change in your mindset so that you don't feel, oh, I'm pushing against people here who are not positive, who are not with me, changing that. Have you had that experience?
Yeah. But this negativity is coming from, globals
team,
or the teams?
The team, local team, local Japanese team, who you...
Yeah. Yes, look, again, it's part of the great experience that we are living in Japan. I think when let me take my home country. When you announce something new, regardless of this is doable, this is not, etc., people have the tendency to jump on it. Oh, something new, something exciting. Let's do
get
it.
onto it.
Yeah, exactly. That's the culture that I'm coming from. Here you're right. People have the tendency, again, it's coming from the education system and so on and so forth. They look at the things, what can go wrong.
Yeah.
That's first thing.
Yeah.
Rather than looking at the opportunities.
What could go right.
Yeah, what can go right and what can be exciting, rewarding.
Yeah.
More, okay, this. So this is one complexity or challenge that you need to tackle. The second thing, again, this perfectionism versus excellence or versus good enough is another barrier, that you see the negativity. Okay, they see it, but how can we make it perfect? It's a long process, and digesting this, processing this takes time. So then, again, it's a long process. Innovation is a process, changing mindset, changing the culture of organization, and giving the examples, and so on and so forth. So it's a long journey. You're right at the beginning. So you need to be ready. What negative or let's say criticism can come on this idea. So you need to be ready for this. And slowly and progressively, you need to, I think, one strategy, you need to find within the organization some people, because all Japanese are not like that, by the way. This is the collective influence. One or two seniors, if they raise their voice in a negative way, the rest will be in silent mode. So you need to detect some other people within the organization to give them the chance, to express their voice as well. So it means to show the organization that it exists, the positive side as well. But yeah, it's a big barrier to tackle.
Well, in Dale Carnegie, we don't have critique per se as a mechanism for feedback. And you spent a long time in France, and people who are from France I speak to, they tell me that their educational system is totally based around critique. So it must be interesting working for French companies with new ideas. But you can say to people, okay, tell me what do you think is going to be a challenge with this idea, get the negativity out first, and then tell me what's good about this idea. And get them to start thinking positively as opposed to being locked into what will go wrong or what's going to be an issue or how do we protect against this change or something like that. You have to switch the gears to, as you say, get the mentally thing going. If someone called you up and said, Aytekin, I'm coming to Japan. My company's sending me out there to be the country head. You've been there 2.5 years, you know about Japan. I want to be an effective leader. What advice would you give them?
Well, I think we've discussed already many things. Just one additional thing or two additional things that I would like to add. One is this tackling with the negative ideas or etc. I learned at very young age 6 hat rules. Do you know this?
De Bono.
Yeah, exactly. The Bono stuff.
Yeah, black hat.
Exactly. I actually. Not regularly, but in certain situations, I experienced this with my teams here. Because when you do this collectively, it's so powerful. And you can start, okay, now, black hat, let's criticize, okay? Let's brainstorm what can go wrong. Then everyone is in the same direction. And then you collect everything. Okay, pretty good. And then now let's put another hat, the green hat or black hat, red hat, etc. So collectively, you invite people to think, to consider all aspects of any ideas or any projects. So this is powerful. I think I would suggest to experience this or to practice this. And while I'm telling you this, I think I'm gonna practice more and more this.
These sessions are always good to remind us of things we should be doing. We're not necessarily always doing.
That's definitely helpful. The second thing, as I said, I think Japan. Before coming here, I had the image about Japan that Japan is, long history, great history. I really appreciate my experience, both professional and personal experience here. But you have the imagination that it's more rather conservative market, so not innovative enough or etc. But it's not true. Japan is pretty innovative actually, but you need to find a way to unleash this potential among your organization and so on. Let me give a couple of examples. I mean, this product, it's fruit blend, kiri fruit blend. This is a unique experience among all other markets.
Only in Japan?
Only in Japan. Sweet cheese. For us, let's say in Western cultures, cheese is cheese. Cheese is not sweet. So we enter into this segment this year. So it's pretty innovative for us, for the group. So,
and would this potentially be taken out of the Japan market and introduced into other markets, or it's just a complete outlier?
Actually, for the time being, only in Japan, because it's just we launched it this year. But Groupe is looking at this practice in Japan, potentially to roll out this similar concept in other markets.
Because sometimes you get, growing up in Australia, sometimes you get cheese with sultanas or raisins in the cheese as well. It's rather a sweet cheese down there. I mean, I haven't lived there for a long time, but I just thinking about that, I remember, sweet cheese, I remember that. But interesting idea.
Yeah. Another example, again, we changed the packaging. We introduced these pack animations, which is quite unique in Japan. So these IP collaborations and so on. So another one.
And this sort of thing in Japan, kids love this sort of stuff, animations or some cartoon character on the product. They want that product. So mothers are sort of being shoehorned into buying them by the kids.
This is another one, chocolate. So again, this is totally innovative idea.
And
so
this came from within the team? Is this something that you were driving? I mean, where did that idea pop up from?
This is test and learn idea.
Right.
So test and learn idea, this is concretely an example of test and learn idea that we launched 2 years ago. And then we saw the success story. And then, of course, it's not within the brand territory normally. Kiri in chocolate category. So these are the stuff that Japan can bring innovations and even can be inspiring for other markets globally. So we need to unleash this potential. It takes time. But innovation exists in the market, in Japanese market, in our industry, I would say.
So you're suggesting to the leader who's coming here, try and find ways of getting ideas from the team, because there's good opportunities there to grow the business and perhaps to have something that can be taken out of Japan globally. And there's nothing better for a country head to be innovating something that goes global from their area.
Of course.
It's a real feather in your cap, so great. Any other ideas for leaders coming here?
Other ideas, actually, this listening mode is super important too. I mean, listen to your customers, listen to your partners, listen to your teams. But it doesn't mean that you will agree on everything, okay? And sometimes you shouldn't. But listening is key to learn, because market is so unique, especially for the Western people coming to the markets. So it's a really unique market discovery. So especially at the beginning, you need to pay attention to listening mode, to learn, to collect the information, and to make the ideas and the decisions. Again, I'm saying all what you hear maybe is not that you want to take your business to, but it's gonna support your decision-making process strongly.
Should they learn Japanese?
Well, if it is possible, yes. In my case, I'm trying, but it's you need a time commitment. You need to study regularly, because alphabet is completely different. That's my difficulty. But definitely, I mean, it's also a link with your teams. Even you use just a couple of small words, expressions, I think it creates some link, some boundaries with the teams, and of course it is appreciated. And I personally, I like learning new languages. So my Japanese is still basic level, but I'm trying.
Just thinking back to your career in total, have you found any particular personal habits, I mean, I'm talking professional habits here, that have served you well over these years? Something that you do as a habitual thing that's helped you to become more successful?
Yeah, definitely. One is, I think, a couple of things. The first thing is planning. At leaders level, you need to plan your week, your month in advance. So planning matters. Maybe it seems basic, but it's not. I do planning of my week when I finish, my job, usually sometimes you work even on the weekend, but Friday evening, I do my next week or following week's planning. So what are my priorities, key priorities? Because agendas are getting, filled easily. So you need to choose your battles in your agenda, priorities. So I set 3 priorities: customers, so external has a priority among all other things, my teams, people, and of course the operations and strategies. I mean, if you have budget time, if you have business plan time, of course. So you need to plan. This is important.
On that, Richard Branson famously, he puts the people first. Ahead of the customer, but you put the customer first. Is there any particular thinking there why the people aren't the main priority and the customers are the main priority?
Well, I agree. I mean, I said people, but for me, you start everything with people, you finish with people. I mean, people starting and ending everything, because again, to tackle the customers important, but you need your people. So of course, yes, I think in my agenda is pretty quite some time is going to my teams to support them and through regular or informal meetings or points. So this prioritization of your agenda is critical, that I'm practicing almost. Again, finance background is helping on these kind of things.
And what about resilience? I mean, if we were having a perfect world, businesses just keep going, up to the top corner there on the right. Results, revenues keep growing and everything's good, but you get things like recessions, you get earthquakes, you get pandemics, you get wars, you get supply chain disruption. You can't get enough containers because they're all in China, and things happen that are really pushing us hard. In terms of it's a VUCA world, as they say. What have you found works well to keep you resilient against all of these things that come up that are hard, which are really demanding, tough situations?
I think first of all my origin, because my country is for a long time is part of VUCA world. So I think in my experience I lived 3-4 times big recession periods, big economic crisis. So you develop these muscles, this resilience, this how to tackle with uncertainty, and then you start to see this part of your life. And now I think, as we used this concept after COVID, especially the new normal is this. There is no stable world. I mean, the world is more and more global, right? One market, if something happening in one market is impacting the rest of the world. So it means you have this somehow. For example, the Red Sea crisis we had at the beginning of this year impacted a lot our supply chain, deliveries. So it means you need to adapt yourself. So this actually, for me, it's coming from my education, coming from my culture, and spending the time. Also, I'm trying to give this as well, this kind of mindset to my teams. Don't expect that everything will be perfect. There is no such a world. Always there will be ups and downs. That's why 2 things, again, as part of you asked previously the question, what I do is contingency planning, scenario planning. So you need to see the things based on different scenarios. You should have each time ideally 3 scenarios. Okay, you have your base case, but what if? What if question is critical. I'm trying to ask with my teams all the time, what if? So then once you have the scenarios, it means you have different options according to different scenarios. So if this scenario is happening, let's say your best case is happening, you are lucky. But what if your worst case is happening? Then you have at least some options. So if you anticipate those in advance, I think you'll be fine somehow. You'll find a way.
But how about you personally? I mean, things hit us personally, not going well. It's tough, you're worried about to keep your job, you have all these concerns, you've got to pay the rent, I've got the mortgage, I've got the kids' education, or whatever it might be, you've got all this pressure. What have you found that helps you as an individual be resilient, to find the strength to keep pushing through?
That's life. That's life. So personally, I think, again, part of my education that whatever the difficulties ahead of you, you can find a way. You can succeed one way or another. Okay? At least you will tell yourself that I've done my best. That's important. So at the end of the day, you need to be able to tell you that I've done my best, everything I can. Then I succeeded or not, I'm fine. I think that feeling is important, that I try every time. Second, I think you need to look at more short term. Sometimes you have some hiccup, you have some big crisis, but life is a journey. I see life as a journey. So in the journey, sometimes you have good time, bad time, rainy weather, snowy weather, or sometimes sunny weather. So it's a journey. Take this as a journey, more long term than specific short term. If you fixed on the short term, sometimes you feel very, very bad. You feel stuck in the short term situation. But if you take a step back and look at a broader way, okay, this is happening. What can I learn from this? And what can I do differently? Or, how can I tackle this? These are the things that I'm asking myself, but more, vision and long-term journey rather than short-term.
And what would be your definition of leadership?
Well, there are lots of definitions, of course, but let me give my way. For me, leadership is to mobilize people by guiding, inspiring them to achieve a common goal, a common vision. Okay. When I was very, very at young age, still at my early stage of my career, I attended an executive leadership training in France. I keep in mind the coach there mentioned about the leadership definition. I like it. So he said, leaders should create conversations with people around them. It can be about business, about culture, about goals, about anything. So you should be able to create engaging conversations with your people. I think I like this definition. So if you create this again, and it should be somehow engaging one, I think you somehow do your leadership role.
Aytekin, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Fantastic discussion. Thank you.
I enjoy a lot.
So please join us again for the next episode of Japan's top business interviews.